Hello and welcome. I'm Judy Friedman-Kadish, Director of Americans for a Safe Israel, more well known as AFSI. We try very hard to bring you the information you need and want to know about what is going on in our beloved Israel. Good morning, afternoon, good evening, everyone. I know we have a few time zones in the audience, and that is wonderful. Zoom does have its good side, but we're still hoping that we can return to some live meetings soon. By the way, AFSI is in the final stages of planning our next Chizuk mission to Israel, and we are expecting a very exciting and informative trip. As usual, we will be off the beaten path, visiting Judea and Samaria and other areas experiencing conflict, to meet with friends, new and old, who are helping to keep Israel safe and strong. There are a few spots still open for those who would like to experience our trip from November 9th to the 17th. You can contact me at judy@afsi.org for more information. We felt it necessary to take a break in our planning sessions to bring you this very important information about the holiest site in the Jewish world, the Temple Mount, Har HaBayit. This is a site we visit on every AFSI mission. And the missions have been going for about 20 years, twice a year. So that's 40 missions. And we visit the Temple Mount because it is our spiritual center. And we find it very uplifting. But we also want to add to the numbers of Jewish visitors to the Temple Mount, because that is a very important thing to us and should be to you too. Recently, a political candidate suggested that the status quo be that Jews may not pray on the Temple Mount. We say, absurd. Our guests today are much more informed on this topic. Doug Altabef, a native New Yorker, made aliyah in 2009 with his wife Linda and youngest child Eliza to Rosh Pina in the Upper Galil. He continued to work in Manhattan for the next 5 years and was something of a pioneer in remote working. Doug has been active in several Zionist NGOs, serving as a director of Biadenu, the movement for Jewish rights on the Temple Mount, as well as the Israel Independence Fund, and serves as the board chairman of Tirtzu, Israel's largest grassroots Zionist organization. He's a regular contributor to the Jerusalem Post, JNS, and Arutz, Israel National News. Tom Nisani is the CEO of Biadenu, which advocates for Jewish rights on the Temple Mount. Tom is a former IDF officer who served for almost a decade in an elite IDF intelligence unit and holds degrees in Middle Eastern Studies and Political Science from Hebrew University. He has also served in several senior positions in Tirtzu. Tom is married with 2 children and lives in the Shomron. So the way we'll do this is Doug will speak first with an overview, and then Tom will get down to the specifics. Please put any questions you have into the chat. And we're looking for questions, not comments, please. We'll try to leave 20 minutes at the end of the program so that Helene Fragman-Abrahamson, an invaluable part of these Zooms, and I will try to get to them all. I give you first, Doug Altabef.
Thank you, Judy. And good afternoon. And I have to tell you, it's like old home week for me to be with the incredible people of AFSI. AFSI, amazingly fierce supporters of Israel. That's who you are. You guys are the best. I have a suggestion. We need to put AFSI in the water supply of the American Jewish community, and then all your troubles will be over. Simple, right? But seriously, I want to say that Judy has done a magnificent job seamlessly donning the mantle of leadership from her amazing mother, Helen. And you at AFSI have been blessed with the continuity of great visionary leadership. And hopefully you will have that for many years to come. As Judy intimated, I've had the pleasure to speak with you in the past as the chairman of the board of Tirtzu. I've had the pleasure to meet with you as a director of the Israel Independence Fund. And tonight, I have the opportunity to speak with you as a director of Biadenu, together with our CEO, Tom Nisani. The fact is that for many people like me, committed activists here in Israel, these roles, these organizations somewhat blend together. For example, Biadenu, as Judy mentioned, is intimately, closely involved with advocating for Jewish rights on the Temple Mount. Now, thankfully, this issue has become recently front and center, highly visible, highly aware to the Israeli public and increasingly to people like yourself around the world. But as they say in Hollywood, the old adage goes, it takes a lifetime to become an overnight sensation. In other words, we've been at this for many years. The advocacy for the Temple Mount is not a recent thing. And I must say, I must really point out that the Israel Independence Fund has played a very leading and important role in incubating, in developing, and of course, financing our ability to tell the story and to be where we are today. And, you know, in terms of long-time commitment, Tom himself is a long-time activist on Har HaBayit. He is the founder and he was the leader of students in support of the Temple Mount. And now, of course, he's at Biadenu. These efforts have been going on for many years. The name Biadenu comes, of course, from the classic statement of General Motagur when the IDF liberated the old city during the Six-Day War. The Temple Mount is in our hands, Biadenu. The Temple Mount is in our hands. We chose to adopt this name because, well, let's face it, in many respects, the Temple Mount is only in our hands in the most formal of senses. Any Jew who has ascended the Temple Mount knows full well that if the Temple Mount is truly in our hands, then Israel has become the Soviet Union. Our whole thrust at Biadenu is to make sure that our citizens and Jews throughout the world and any people who care about the Jewish people and the land of Israel know this, that the Temple Mount is the greatest civil rights and human rights violation to the Jewish people in the land of Israel and perhaps anywhere in the Western world. It's a very powerful indictment, but it's a reality that we have to deal with. Now, how did this come about? How did we go from the Temple Mount is in our hands to becoming dhimmis, becoming second-class citizens in our own land? Most of you are aware that Moshe Dayan had no interest in controlling what he referred to as, quote, another Vatican. And as one of the many boneheaded decisions that Israeli leaders have made over the years when it comes to making accommodations, he turned over daily control of the Temple Mount to the Jordanian Waqf with the stipulation that Jews be allowed access. This then became enshrined as the so-called status quo, a term that for the left has taken on quasi-religious significance, not unlike the religious significance that attaches to, you're all sitting down, the two-state solution. So the status quo is something that is, Torah Messina. And of course, the status quo has always been defined in the most demeaning and the most restrictive manner. And the most recent example, the most recent pronouncement of how it really plays out in reality, and Judy referred to it, was made by a source none other than Israel's interim Prime Minister Yair Lapid. In recent pandering, campaigning for Arab votes, here's what Lapid said about the Temple Mount, quote, "We allow Jewish visits. We do not allow Jewish prayers on the Temple Mount. We allow Jewish visits. They visit. It is under supervision so that the status quo is not violated. The status quo is not violated," end quote. Well, the good news is that evidently Yair Lapid does not read the newspapers. So he doesn't understand, or he's not willing to admit, that the status quo is being chipped away at on almost a daily basis. And the chipping is being done by regular people who insist that they will not be treated like second-class citizens in their own country and on our own holiest site. And that brings me to Tom Nisani, who I'm going to turn this over to and ask if he could provide some background on what the status quo has meant, how restrictive it's been, and more importantly at this point, what we're doing about it to change it. So Tom, take it away.
Well, thank you, Doug. It's an honor to speak after you, and thank you all for inviting us. Happy to speak with you from the Shomron. Well, I will make a short brief alongside with some PowerPoint I made and few videos to show you the reality right now on the Temple Mount. And of course, I will talk about the thing that we do to improve the situation and the awareness about the issue. So we will start. Of course, me and Doug will answer questions soon. It will be short, but specific. So I'm, as Doug said, the executive director of Be'adenu, which is the largest and biggest organization in Israel to promote the Temple Mount issue. And I will start here by saying that actually, as a background, of course, we can say that Israel won every war against the Arab nations, but I'm hearing myself, so I will.
No, this fellow Saul needs to mute himself.
Yeah. Well, okay, I will proceed.
Thank you.
On the Temple Mount, situation is completely different because actually right after the Six-Day War, as Doug mentioned, Moshe Dayan actually gave the Waqf, the Jordanians, the control inside the Temple Mount, which is mostly happening until today with some slight differences. The Israeli flag, which was raised for something like 3 or 4 hours on the Dome of the Rock, removed. The management of the mount was given over to the Waqf, no Israeli sovereignty whatsoever. As I said, there is slight changes until today, but even nowadays, actually, the Waqf runs almost everything inside the Temple Mount, from cleaning the site and even replacing lamps on the buildings. Everything is done by the Waqf. Israelis are restricted in many ways while they're going up to the mount. I can even mention that going inside, ascending the Temple Mount is very much restricted to 4 or 5 hours per day. from one entrance. The Temple Mount actually has 10 different entrances, and 9 of them are given to Muslim only. By the way, Muslim from all over the world. I can be a Muslim guy from Indonesia and get inside the Temple Mount before a Jew Israeli, because they allowed to get in, and I have restricted hours and entrances. The Arabs have almost complete freedom on the mount. I call it their safe zone. The safe zone for Arabs in Israel is the Temple Mount. That's why, by the way, it became a place that plenty of terror attacks started from, because there is no magnetometers, there is no checking to the Muslim who get inside the Temple Mount. And now I will stop to show you some 3 short videos that we can discuss after. Just a minute. Okay, I will show you some, hope everyone sees it. If no, please say to me that I can notice. The first one shows the policy of discrimination against Jews. This is just a small example, of course, that we are documenting every day on the Temple Mount.
זכותך לא לומר שום דבר, כל מה שתגיד יכול לשמש לבדיחת ראייה ומשפט. בוגר ואתה מורכב, בוא תלווה איתי, תודה.
מטפל בזה?
מה זה?
שאדי, אתה מטפל בכדורגל?
בטח. השתחררנו טוב מאוד.
ידע לעצור מיד, אה?
Okay, this is a small example of how an Arab kid playing soccer on the holy place, the Temple Mount, freely. The cops actually don't do anything. And 10 minutes before that, you can see a Jew that did nothing and got arrested for, and this is happening daily. It can be happen for a Jew who's praying even without making any noise or showing it outside, or raising the Israeli flag. And so this is the good example of the discrimination. Here, this nice guy, maybe you heard,
and the very next day
is called Noor Dahri. Is a Pakistani, origins from Pakistan. He's now living in London. He's a Muslim who was a terror activist back then, but then he discovered Israel, and he was in Jerusalem 1 month ago, and that's what he has to say about the Temple Mount.
I went to, it was a Friday at the Jummah prayer. I went to the Mosque Al-Aqsa and prayed there. And then I went to the Kotel, which is Western Wall. And when I went to Western Wall, I was surprised that no one stopped me. And no one even cared about who I am, because my dress, what I was wearing, is called a shalwar kameez, a very typical Pakistani dress. We wear it, not Arabic jalbab or anything else. Mm-hmm. And people looking, but they were not afraid of me, no scared of me. No one even came close to ask me that why you are here, you are Muslim. It was completely surprised to me that how comes I, being a Muslim, can go to Al-Aqsa, and I can go to the Western Wall, which is dedicated to the Jewish only, and I can pray both sides, both areas, without any hesitation, without any fear. Mm-hmm. And how comes that the Jewish people who are, the Temple Mount is a first prayer direction to them. First Kaaba, we can say a holy place. Yeah. Holiest place, and they can't go to anywhere around the Temple Mount. And we Muslims come from the, from Western world or Eastern. We can allow to go to Al-Aqsa and even the Jewish Western Wall, and that surprised me. And then I thought, is it not apartheid? It's completely unfair that Jewish people are banned to go to Temple Mount, and we Muslims can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And this is the great example of the coexistence and freedom of the movement of the people all around the world into Israel.
Okay, so the last video I want to show you is how what the Temple Mount became and becomes when Israel is not there. This all footage is from the last year, actually. Okay. So those are the videos for now. I will be back to the PowerPoint. So I think those videos showed exactly how things are going inside the Temple Mount while Israel don't really exist. You can see also in the pictures some graffiti on a very ancient, even if I'm not referring to what Jewish or not, this is an ancient place, sacred place, and it is all over with the graffiti. I don't know any other place in the world which is so important that the authorities will let it happen. This is how the Palestinians look and view and see the Temple Mount. They see it as the entire 144 dunams as a big mosque, only for Muslims, no entrance for Jews or Christians. And this is how they see it and refer to it. About the status quo, which is a very important point. As Doug mentioned, even today in Israel, the Temple Mount, the status quo still, people refer to it as something that is actually exists in reality, while I can say that it doesn't really exist because, for example, 3 new mosques were built from 67 on the Temple Mount. This is not status quo. This is the opposite of status quo. And even if you get back to what Moshe Dayan agreed with the Waqf, this is not written anywhere, but he agreed that Israelis can get inside the Temple Mount as long as they want, at every hour and every time. And today we know that this is not really happen. On the pictures below, you can see that actually until 67, until Israel got back to the Temple Mount, the Temple Mount was actually abandoned place and nobody really cared about. The Jordanians did nothing to improve and to take care about the Temple Mount. And apparently, the minute the Jews got back to the Temple Mount, the Waqf began to work. And he dug inside the mount throughout. Many places were just thrown out from the Temple Mount, and until now we are finding some ancient coins from back then, from the temple periods. What is happening on the Israeli side, on our side, lately? First, I will show you some graph soon, but we can see the numbers of Jews ascending the mount growing significantly. The last government, we have elections next week, as you know. The last government actually collapsed because of the mount. The first time that the government almost collapsed was on the Ramadan and Passover, when Ram party decided to break out from the government, then got back, but it didn't really worked. So we succeeded to make the Temple Mount a big issue lately, which also helped us to help this government to collapse. Growing public awareness, but still a lot of fear, fear from what can happen if Jews will pray, what can happen if Jews will go freely on the Temple Mount. Everyone is still make us afraid from some big war that might happen, which I don't believe will. But along with this good issues, we can still see that on the last April, this flag, the PLO flag, was raised for 10 days on the top of Dome of the Rock until it was removed by the police and the Waqf. And this current situation leads to the message, in my opinion, that the extremists are getting from the Israel not taking care about the Temple Mount. They see that they are winning. They see that every time that they're doing some new riots in Jerusalem, then Israel retreats and start all over again talking about maybe Jews will not be allowed to ascend the Temple Mount, and maybe we should not let Jews pray, and they see it as surrender. And I remember myself 5 or 6 years ago saying that what is happening on the Temple Mount will go outside and all over Israel, and we can actually see it happening. All over Jerusalem, there is riots. Jews are forbidden to go in some ways, like Damascus Gate, which is now almost, Jews are not, almost do not go through there, and the police close the path to Jews once in a while. And victory for them on the Temple Mount is a sign of the dream to destroy the Jewish state, because if they, as long as they feel that they are winning on the mount, on Al-Aqsa, how they call it, they will still have the dream to destroy the Jewish state. 2 more things. This is the numbers of Israelis, Jews that are going up and ascending the Temple Mount. You can see that in comparison to last year, we can see that numbers are double. So this is pretty amazing, because you should remember that every Jew that ascending the Temple Mount has only 4 hours per day, and many restrictions, many arrests, many everyone is against him, actually. The media, the authorities. He has all of the reasons not to come, but still we can see the numbers are growing very much. And we, as an organization, working really hard to change things. You can see some small examples from the media about things we're doing. Here, legal activity, we have lawyers that sue sometimes the police, sometimes the Waqf for harming our rights and restrictions which are illegal. We are talking and raising awareness about the Temple Mount. We have thousands of Jews that are sending with us, with our guides that are waiting on the Temple Mount. And we're working also on some various of topics regarding to the Mount. You can see below damages to Jewish antiques on the Mount. Well, this is just a small examples of what are we doing. I think that's it for now as some short brief, and we'll be happy to expand.
I just want to pick up on a couple of very important things that Tom said. First of all, he alluded to something that looms very, very large in the Arab mindset, and that is that he who controls Jerusalem controls Israel, and he who controls the Temple Mount controls Jerusalem. All right, they understand this better than we do. All right, they understand the stakes better than we do. Our relationship, as Tom mentioned, with all of this is basically to keep a lid on things. If you ask, why is the status quo the status quo? It's all fear driven. It's all driven by we don't want there to be rioting on the Temple Mount. We don't want it to be the first domino that leads to another intifada. And the Arabs know this, and they regularly invoke like a dog whistle. You can just set your watch by it. Whenever they want to create trouble, you hear Arab imams get up and say, Al-Aqsa is under attack. Al-Aqsa is under attack. And this is meant to bring out the faithful and to storm the barricades, as it were. Well, Aqsa is never under attack. We know that. Everyone knows this. And yet it is a convenient way of running the flag up the pole and getting people very, very worked up. The problem is that we give in to this fear. We buy in to the idea that, gee, there might be a problem here. Instead of doing things like saying, no, Al-Aqsa is not under attack. And if you want to ever see the Temple Mount again, you're going to stop doing that. We don't push back. And that is, it's very disturbing. It's very distressing. So the pushing back that we are doing is really grassroots pushing back. It is having citizens be arrested and then fighting their arrest. I don't know how many times Tom has been arrested, okay? There's probably a scrapbook of him in a couple of police stations. We have another director who was recently arrested 2 or 3 times for blowing a shofar outside the precinct of the Temple Mount. And once or twice doing it with an MK, with our friend Simcha Rotman, but it didn't matter, he got arrested anyhow. But the real point is that we're willing, Tom is willing to challenge, we are willing to challenge in court, and we're winning in court, because fear is not what this country was built on. This country is built on law. This country is built on principles and values. And fear is just an easy way of saying, we're not letting you do anything, all right? Because we don't want to have to deal with it. And it is the willingness to stand up and say, we're not going to live by virtue of fear. We don't care that we have to fight this in court and we'll win in court. That is what is slowly changing the status quo. Now, Tom, you can speak to this If a Jew goes up today and says the Shema, is he going to be arrested? Tom, you have to
Yeah.
unmute.
Well, I can say that things got changed since we began with our activity, and specifically the all of the activity that referring to law and lawyers and legal rights. Back then, 6 or 5 or 7 years ago, yeah, a Jew was probably making a Shema call or raising Israeli flag or praying will go to arrest. Right now, we will probably not be arrested, but he will be kicked out of the Temple Mount and maybe forbidden to get inside for a few months, which is not a very good situation, but it's better. And so this is our current fight in this manner to prevent the possibility of the police to kick out the Jews who are only praying or waving Israeli flag inside the Mount compound.
Is there any discipline exercised against Muslims? Is there anything a Muslim can do on the Mount that will get him or her thrown off?
Not so much, not so much. Well, actually, I always say I don't want any more rights for now than anyone else. We just want the law and the Mount to be a normal place, like all around Israel. When someone do some violation to law or something which is illegal, he should get the same treatment. On the Temple Mount, things are not like it at all. You can see a Jew that is praying and get arrested, and you can see a Muslim who is praying and not get arrested. So this is as people like to say, this maybe not apartheid, but this is a big discrimination. It is very clear.
Tom, is this something that's changing constantly? Our AFC group was last October, we were in Israel, and we were very surprised to see shiurim going on in one corner with prayer, with study. Has that been rolled back?
Well, it is kind of rolled back on the past 2 months. I believe because of the current government, which is something that may be changed next week. But also because it is not really given in a complete way for us. I mean that you can see sometimes that police are giving up or letting us do more. But as long as we don't get it officially, then it can be changed. And this is what we see. We should not be happy and delighted about us being allowed to mumble or do some little pray. We should bless about it and say, okay, we have maybe a little progress, but still things are really bad. Because as Doug said, and I support it 100%. I don't know any place on the Western world that some specific kind of population, because we are Jews, we're forbidden to do many things that, I mean, even in Germany, I'm allowed to pray. I was in Dubai 1 year ago, and I was praying on the streets, and I was going with kippah all over Dubai, and people blow the shofar. So how come I cannot do it on my own state? This is unacceptable, and this is something that sometimes we forget because we're so into it. We say, oh, thanks God we can pray, but no, as long as we cannot do anything we want on our only state, then I will never be delighted for now.
Right. By the way, Judy, this is not a left-right issue, because for many, many years under Netanyahu's prime ministership, this situation applied. He was a very big advocate of keeping the status quo, because he's a very big advocate of keeping a lid on things, and kicking the can down the road is a time-honored Israeli way of dealing with a lot of issues, domestic issues particularly. And so it's only when groups like ours are calling the question and forcing the issue that there is the willingness to even engage with this. Tom, you remind everyone, a couple of years ago, there was a short-lived attempt to put in metal detectors on the Temple Mount, right? This was an attempt to make sure that guns were not being brought on, because that has happened. Weaponry has been brought on. And the reaction was fast, furious, and very effective, meaning that there was widespread Muslim outrage that this would be the case, and our government capitulated very, very quickly. Do I have it pretty much right, Tom?
Yeah, exactly, 100%. Well, we can still remember that in 2017, two policemen, Druze policemen, were killed, were murdered actually on the Temple Mount, and Israel may wanted to put magnetometers on the entrances to check that no other terrorists will get inside. And after a short threats by Palestinians and Jordanians and all over the world condemned Israel, and we retreat. And I believe, as someone asked on the chat, I believe that we should take the control to our hands, because it will never end. It will never end as long as Jordan and the Waqf and the Palestinians ruling the Temple Mount. We will all suffer from terror and attacks and hatred of Israel, and actually also other Muslims. Now we have the Abraham Accords with Dubai and Bahrain and Morocco and other Muslim countries. And I personally know that they also afraid to go to the Mount, to Al-Aqsa, to pray, because they know that the side who really rules and runs the place is the Waqf and the Palestinians. And this is totally unacceptable.
There was an incident soon after the Abraham Accords. A group came up from the Emiratis. They went to Al-Aqsa. They were attacked, physically attacked by worshipers there. And their takeaway was, now we understand why the Jews are so upset about the Temple Mount. We get it, okay? If we're getting this treatment and we're Muslims, the hatred and the inability, the unwillingness to play in the sandbox, as it were, is just profound. And they saw it with their own eyes. They experienced this kind of rejectionist hatred, and it's amazing that we, like Tom said, it's only when we are in control. All right. And by the way, when we are in control, the Arabs get it. They go along with it. It's when we waffle, when we, in the name of being reasonable, we try to compromise. They don't see that as reason. They don't see it as compromise. It's called weakness. And weakness is something to be exploited. And they do it very effectively. The example of the metal detectors is a great example. We folded very quickly, and they say, well, they'll fold. We're running this place. This is the way it is, because we refuse to exercise our sovereignty. And when we do exercise our sovereignty, ultimately it gets respected. But when we don't, we're lost, and God protect us.
So true. Time to take some audience questions. Elaine?
I think that Mark Chardoff's question was actually answered, so I'm going to add a bit to it. So Mark asks, since the Arabs have violated the status quo on the Temple Mount on so many occasions, doesn't Israel have the complete right to reframe the status quo for the benefit of the Jewish people and consistent with Torah directives? You've talked about why that hasn't been done, but what do you believe it will take, since there is a legal imperative to, quote, keep the peace, but not only for one people, but for all people? I assume that's, that law it exists even on the Temple Mount. What will it take to get to that point?
Well, I'm curious to hear what Tom has to say. My own feeling is that the red line is attacking the coattail from above. That if there are, and we saw once or twice it happened, and then it stopped very quickly, because I think the Arabs realized that is a red line. And but short of that, I'm not really sure. Tom mentioned there were 2 Druze policemen who were murdered on the Temple Mount. Didn't really change things very much. We tried a little bit, but not that seriously. Tom, what's your feeling on this?
Well, I believe that it will happen. I want to talk really practically. I think it will happen one day, that we will take the sovereignty back and practice the Israeli law on the Mount. Our law already requires it. I mean, there is no permission to any prime minister to give up and then not let Jews pray, for example. But it is still happening. I believe that it will be changed as long as more Israelis go up to the Temple Mount, as long as we proceed with our activity. It will be happen. It cannot take forever to keep that way, because it is so wrong that it will never settle. It will never become normal. And I think the new generations are really enthusiastic to change it. And so I guess it will be happening from the people, not from top to down.
Right.
As a quick follow-up to that, has there been any attempt to use the human rights pedestal to press that forward?
You mean the human rights issue? Let's say talk about human rights. Yeah, we surely talk about it. I have to say that we as Israeli patriots will not go that far. I mean, I will never consider going to the United Nations or something like this to require protection. We are working inside Israel and inside the Knesset to change it. If we really wanted, we can even go that way, because people are always talking about violation of rights to the Arabs in Israel. But for now, I'm the most violated population in Israel, because I'm not allowed to mumble or pray or raise my own flag. But because we're proud Israelis and, as I said, Israeli patriots, then we will figure out a way to find solution in our home and not more than that. But we do talk about our rights and civil rights and our right to pray according to the law, because this is the truth.
Thank you. Phil Spivak asked a question about making concessions to the Palestinians and will that bring peace or encourage more violence? And I think that was a question that you answered already, that this is in the Middle East, kind of might makes right. People understand power. They don't understand if you give up and you try to be nice, you've lost. So we have another question from Lori Kurz. Which politician, which party is against giving away land, not building communities on Israeli-won land, not allowing Jews on the Mount whenever a Jew wants? Who is speaking for Israel? Who?
Inside the Knesset, you mean?
I guess that's her question.
Yeah. Well, I can say that we have more and more friends inside the Knesset that support our cause. Of course, I can say that in the Likud party and the Tzionut Datit, maybe you have it in English variation.
Zionists. Yes.
Yeah, this is our most closest friends, let's say, but we do work with other parties. But naturally, for now, the right wing are more for us. But still, I can say also that even on the last 10 years, while we had a right-wing government, things have not been changed significantly on the Mount, and we had a lot of criticism to the right-wing governments, and I hope it will be changed after next week.
Mark Karoff asks very good questions. Do you see something like nonviolent civil disobedience as being, a la Martin Luther King, being a good option for taking back control of the Temple Mount?
I think that that's what we use all the time. I think that is the basic MO, is that Jews have been ascending, they have been praying, they have been willing to be arrested, they have done what they feel is appropriate to be doing on the Har. There's never been an incident where Jews ascending the Har have attacked a policeman. Okay, there's no violence. This is, I mean, it's the antithesis of why one goes up to Har HaBayit. You don't go up to pick a fight. You go up for spiritual reasons. And that kind of grassroots bravery, conviction is, as Tom said a minute ago, is ultimately what will change the situation in our favor. It will not be a top-down by fiat directive, although we will have support and by many people in the Knesset, but this will be, as a great deal of social change in Israel is a function of bottom-up, grassroots kind of change.
And I think the final question we're going to ask is, do you feel that the prime ministers, for instance, Netanyahu, Mindy Stein is asking, feel pressure from America and therefore they don't change, they back off? And what can we do to make prime ministers, even in Likud, finally stop this discrimination?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, yes, there's always pressure. I just recently read Michael Oren's book, Ally. I read it because I had the pleasure to interview him. And he talks about the pressure that Israel is under all the time from the United States. It's like the hug of death type of phenomenon. And I think one of the, I don't want to turn this into a political discussion, but I think that the current administration is very, very sensitive to the wishes of the American administration. And I think that is proving to be counterproductive. We are a sovereign state. We're not a vassal state. And our leaders sometimes forget that. And it's critically important that we are willing to assert our sovereignty, that we are allowed to act because of our own interests. And if it means pushing back, then so be it. Other countries do this, and they still manage to, be visited by other envoys and find that the welcome mat is open to them in the United States. We should be no different.
Absolutely, agreed. We are at the 3 o'clock mark, and which means it's about 10 o'clock your time. And I know Tom has small children, and it probably is tired and ready to say goodbye to us. So, Tom.
Yeah, well, I just maybe as an end to our discussion, I just want to say that about what Doug referred to, that lately Australia canceled the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And we can see immediately all of Israel attacking Australia and saying, how come you don't recognize Jerusalem? But in the meanwhile, we don't really recognize ourselves, Jerusalem as our capital. And we're giving up to pressure from a country like Jordan and the Palestinians. So before we're going out to the world and demand our rights, we should take it ourselves and make Jerusalem great again, let's say. And I want to thank you all for the discussion, and pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. It's been our pleasure. We're really honored that you took the time and to be with us and to show us the videos and the PowerPoints. Very, very enlightening. AFSI will be there. I forget which date we're going to be on the Temple Mount, but we will be there with Biadenu. You can be sure of that.
Well,
let us know. We have wonderful guides, terrific guides who bring people up. We didn't really talk about that, but one of the great innovations that we have done is to make the car more user-friendly, in the sense that people get a better sense of where they're walking, why they're walking, where they're walking, what they're seeing, and it's a great enhancement to the visitation experience.
Yes, Biadenu is wonderful. Israel Independence Fund, having incubated it, did a wonderful, wonderful job, and we're very proud of both of those organizations. So what we're going to do now is stop the recording, and if there are people who'd like to stay